Well, hello everyone. We are already back because I feel like I have more to say on that. I feel like 20 minutes wasn't enough to do it justice. Also, like to actually be able to use my map this time if that's going to work. Hopefully, it will. So, um, I'm going to basically do a very similar breakdown. If you watch the first one, don't feel bothered watching this one again. It's going to be most of the same content. We're just talking about everything, but this time we have the help of the map, which I guess on the last stream the map was cut off. Let me just make sure it's working this time actually. Um, okay, yeah. Sorry, I just had to listen to myself talk. Okay, our map is working. Let me just. This is gonna be the main live stream. Consider that last one mute, even though I'm gonna reiterate all the same stuff. Yeah. Anyways, so New York, five boroughs, Staten Island, expected to go for. I was almost expecting it to go for Sliwa. It went for Cuomo. It went for Cuomo by a lot. Here's the epitome of Republicans voting for Cuomo over Sliwa. Um, and yeah, that happened in large force. That's little surprised me. I thought Cuomo would win the Bronx. He did not. I thought Cuomo could have pulled through in Queens. He did not. He really wasn't able to pull through anywhere. He ran an awful campaign. He and Sliwa should have dropped out to begin with. I know that if it was just Sliwa, he still wouldn't have had much of a chance against Mamdani. But um, even if Sliwa dropped out, I don't know if even if Sliwa, the only way I could possibly have seen Cuomo getting the win here is for the moment the Democratic primary ended. Curtis Sliwa gives up the Republican nomination and the Republican and independent nominations, even though the independent doesn't have one. Andrew Cuomo should have ran as an independent. He should have ran as a Republican. He should have ran as Stop Anti Semitism. Could have had his name on the ballot 3 or 4 times. He didn't do that though. He went out and created his own party, and he felt like he needed to run, be that out of ego. And Cuomo and Sliwa hates Cuomo, as most Republicans who have lived in New York for the last 20 years do. He does not like Cuomo. That's why he wouldn't drop out. And it was kind of just this lesser of two evils thing. But I feel like to treat Cuomo as a lesser of two evils was never right. There, Cuomo and Mamdani realistically are very similar candidates. One has more personal issues and the other has more political issues. In my eyes, they're basically almost as bad. Um, and hence why Donald Trump endorsing Andrew Cuomo on election eve as I'll take a bad Democrat over a communist, that was futile. That got nothing done. There was no point in doing that. And with Donald Trump posts yesterday that the reason that Republicans lost this election are due to the shutdown and him not being on the ballot, I don't think he's ever been more right about anything. I genuinely think that is one of the most correct posts he has ever made. Because he wasn't on the ballot, he wasn't campaigning, he wasn't doing rallies with Chitterelli and Winsome or Cuomo. He wasn't out there. He wasn't like Obama, who went to both Jersey and Virginia to campaign with the candidates there. And although I disagree that Obama would ever stand on a stage with someone like Jay Jones, um, Trump should have been doing that. He should have been campaigning. He wasn't campaigning. He wasn't get the MAGA base did not go out to vote. The Democrat base went out to vote. The youth base went out to vote. If we look at exit polling, which is the most shocking, look at age. 78% for Mamdani. 78%. It's huge. Absolutely huge. That's my generation. That's our generation. That's, a year ago you would have said is going right very hard. Now it's shifting left very hard, at least in a city like New York, which is about a 70-30 split Democrat to Republican, I'd say. Uh, Race, if you look at it, this is kind of the expected. Um, Non-white voters turning out for Mamdani in huge numbers, not as expected. Almost would have thought they would turn out more for Cuomo, uh, you know, but not really. Education, yeah, this isn't a surprise. If you have a college degree, a lot of college students, you know who they're going to vote for, and that's coming from a college student. um, the specific one I want to see is it's lower down here. I want to know who these 6% of Republican men who voted for Mamdani was, but this shows you right here. Democrats, 66%, Democrats, 31%. So 23% of Republicans actually voted for Curtis Sliwa. Almost all of them voted for Cuomo. And this also shows you 15% to 60%, basically. That's 4 times. It's a 4-to-1 ratio of Democrats to Republicans. Independents, yeah, that's expected for independents. I wonder who the 8% of very conservative voters are who voted for Zoran. Very interesting. The one I'm getting down to here, they have a lot of exit polls. I do love that NBC is able to do so many of these. The one I'm looking for is about people who actually live in New York City. Yeah, as you can see, there's a decent amount of Republicans and conservatives who voted for Mamdani, which, as much as it should be surprising, I'm not that surprised by it. I have a close friend who most people would consider extremely conservative, extremely Republican. He's a big Mamdani fan. It's very interesting. Yeah, so this shows you if Sliwa wasn't in the race, it still wouldn't have changed anything. Okay, well, it's buried somewhere in here. But anyways, the voting pattern of people who have lived in New York for more than 20 years compared to people who haven't lived in New York for more than 20 years. I've lived in New York for 3 months. Maybe I'm not or New York City at least for 3 months. Maybe I'm not the best to talk on it, but it's clear those who lived in New York for a very shorter amount of time, who have really only lived here for the last 5 to 10 years, they were voting for Zoran in huge numbers. While those who have lived here for much longer, have invested much more into it, who have worked here, they were voting for Cuomo. They were not voting for him. They do not want him running the city, and I feel like they're going to move out. The Fidney chief, the fire department chief, he already announced his resignation today. That shouldn't be much of a surprise. You're going to see a lot of NYPD members announce their resignation over the next few months because they will not want to be a part of this. So yeah, we're really just focusing on New York for this part of the stream. I already gave my peace of mind about Jersey and Virginia and California and Maine and Texas and all that. But yeah, this is just like, there's nothing surprising here. The surprising parts come down here. Yeah, I'm finding so many of these. Yeah, Jewish vote, there you go. That disproves that theory about the Mamdani winning the Jewish vote. That disproves it right there. And these NBC exit polls are extremely accurate. I give them that. Although I don't agree with everything NBC believes in, I believe that the way they run their election polling and their election shows, I believe they run it very well. So I believe this is very accurate. And if you can tell, their polls, basically, if you average their polls out, it would have predicted the entire election. But yeah, Jewish voters, mostly for Cuomo. Catholic voters, mostly for Cuomo. Protestant or other Christian, that one's a bit more close. That's not too surprising. But if you're an atheist, yeah, there you go. And other, which would mostly be made up of Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, but mostly Muslims. Probably 10% of that would be Muslim. Yeah, obviously voting for Mamdani in a very high regard. Yeah, Jewish voters, if you are religiously or ethnically Jewish and you hear the stuff he's saying, it's probably very hard to support him. Just even though some of it may be scandals that wind's being blown at to make them look bigger than they are. yeah, that it makes sense that you wouldn't want to vote for a guy who says the things that he says. Anyways, income. This is interesting. Look at this. The poorest people in New York City, if you're making under 30,000, you're relying on government aid. You're relying on welfare, food stamps, SNAP benefits, Medicaid, Medicare. Cuomo won. In fact, Sliwa got a lot of that. You see Mamdani take over kind of, this is middle class range here, 50,000 to 200,000. That's the middle class. This is still pretty poor. So this is the base that he seemed to be catering towards, and he lost that chunk right there. Well, 300,000 or more, you're pretty rich. Yeah, you're voting for Cuomo. That makes sense. Not voting for Sliwa at all, but he's still getting a lot of that vote. Yeah, like that shows you everything right there. Total family income. Yeah, here's just a lot of income stuff. This nothing to be surprised by there. Here it is. How long have you lived in New York City? Less than 5 years. 85%. This is the most important exit poll that you can possibly look at. 85% of those living in New York voted for Mamdani. Sorry, got tripped up there. Yeah, 85% of the people who've moved, those are the people moving in. Those are probably a lot of college students, because if you're a college student, you probably lived here for less than 5 years. I've lived here for 3 months. And everyone else living on campus with me has also lived here for less than 5 years. So college students, as you see, 7%. College students probably registering to vote in the city, which isn't what I did. I registered to vote in my hometown, as I said before. But college students registering to vote in the city, 85%. 5 to 10 years, your family moved here not too long ago. You moved here not too long ago. You know, you've been through, the Adams administration and the, what would have been, tail end of de Blasio or Bloomberg, who was in before Adams. Anyways, look at this, though. You were born in New York, or you've been here longer. You're not voting for him. You're not voting for him. You were born in New York. You're old enough to remember the first World Trade Center bombing. You're old enough to remember the Crown Heights riots. You're old enough to remember 9/11. You're not going to forget those. And when there's a candidate who, in the last week of the election, says that the real victim of 9/11 was his aunt, who wasn't even his aunt, it was a cousin of his father's, who didn't even live in the city. It's just, you're not going to vote for someone who, treats an event like that, which was the most horrific event in the city's history, like that. And a man who would campaign with Al Sharpton, who people know what he did in 1991 in Crown Heights. That's what got Giuliani elected, was because Dinkins looked so bad in letting a neighborhood be attacked like that. Children. Cuomo won, people with children. At least children under 18, younger children. That makes complete sense. Men with children, 50. Women with children, more for Cuomo, actually. That is an interesting surprise. Yeah, but men and women with no children not voting for him. First time voting in the election, 67% or 66%. That makes a lot of sense. He got a lot of people to turn out to vote. He's kind of, I call him the Democrats' version of Trump, because it's the scandal proofness, but B, it's like that charismatic figure that people just love. I don't be surprised if in the next few years they make his version of the MAGA hat, whatever that is. Maybe it's a pin or something. Maybe it's a shirt, but like they'll, turn him into merch. They'll turn him into the most capitalist thing in the world and start selling T-shirts. That'll be. I'll hold that joke in for when it happens today. To support. Who are these 5% of Mamdani voters who voted to support Donald Trump? This makes so much more sense right here. Not a factor. Yeah, he probably shouldn't have been a factor. I think he became very much a factor. That's so interesting. But yeah, that's not a surprise. No one approved. That's interesting. That's more than I think. 9% of people, I guess those are your independents. But I guess that makes sense. Other 50, okay, so people who would write in would vote for Zoran. Not a surprise at all there. But yeah, look at this: 62% of voters voted Harris, 25% voted Trump. I think about 30% voted Trump last year, give or take, in the city. That's probably a little off. But yeah, I guess Republicans turn out, let Democrats turn out high. Do you consider yourself a democratic socialist? Who should be surprised by that? But I guess there's democratic socialists out there voting for Andrew Cuomo. Probably more Bernie fans, and also that could be a bit where that Jewish population who voted for Cuomo in high numbers comes in. Do you consider yourself MAGA? Look at that, 9%. 9% now. They probably survey 10,000 people for this. 9% to say that they were MAGA and vote for Mamdani. Everyone else is going to be surprised by that. I'm not necessarily surprised by that. Because I truly think that he does kind of appeal. If you look at Andrew Schultz, had him on his podcast. Andrew Schultz had, he was a year ago, he was a Trump supporter practically. A year ago, he was doing all the, podcasts, and now he's having Mamdani on. Because it kind of aligns with that younger breed of Republicans who were, very pro-worker, almost pro-union. Somewhat unfavorable, the fact that almost half of the people polled said they were unfavorable of the Democratic Party shouldn't be too much of a surprise. 42% unfavorable, 66% unfavorable to Republicans. There's nothing to be surprised by here. How much? You're running to be mayor of a city. This shouldn't be a factor theoretically. But Mamdani made it a factor, and then Cuomo made it a factor, saying that you're going to arrest the leader of a foreign government if they come to your city. He claims that it's Cuomo's the one making it about this. Cost of housing, that is a major problem. That makes sense. Crime, I'd say, is the biggest problem. It's clear that a lot of Mamdani voters don't think crime is a problem. Look at this. Not a problem. They're probably voting for him. It sucks to see that you can live in New York City and not think crime is a problem. It is the problem, and it's been the problem for a long time. That pretty much sums up all my thoughts on this. Like I said, I'm not surprised by the results. I'm surprised by some of these polls. I want to go through some of these deeper because it's so interesting. But NBC is kind of great for this. So that's New York City. I gotta live here for 4 years, but I think Mamdani, his policies are a lot of talk, and I don't think he's gonna be able to get a lot of it done. You're not gonna see something like raising taxes on whiter neighborhoods. That just won't be allowed if he tries to do that. Because first it's got to go through Albany, and it's got to go through the city council, and then it's got to go to D.C. D.C.'s not going to let it happen. Albany's going to fight him on everything. City council is probably going to fight him on a lot, even though I believe Palladino was the only Republican to stay on the council. She won her district. She won her race. I don't think Maramata won, actually, but New York City. It's going to be New York City again. It's no longer in the Giuliani days, but 2029, 4 years. We'll see. Maybe I'll give it a try. Who knows? But that's going to do it for today. Thank you all very much.